COP28 commences today, marking the annual United Nations Climate Summit, where global leaders will discuss how to limit and prepare for future climate change.
It's being held in Dubai. It's part of the United Arab Emirates, of course, which is one of the world's biggest oil producers, and it goes on till the 12th of December. Really? Does it really?
So we're delighted to be joined in the studio by Climate Party leader Ed Gemmell. Morning, Ed. Can you sense our sort of cynicism, our scepticism here, that this is anything other than a greenwash?
Yes, it's certainly emanating from you. And I mean, you know when I come on here that I'm always advocating for much more aggressive, ambitious climate action, and also about us getting on top of this commercially and starting to drive it forward. You know, I want us to read the horse that wins the race rather than be at the back of the pack. But this ridiculous climate jamboree, I mean, the idea of an annual meeting is OK, but the idea that 70,000 people need to turn up in a petro state to start talking about climate change is utterly ridiculous. I was at COP26 leading a delegation.
Was this R1 in Glasgow?
R1 in Glasgow. And we did achieve a few steps forward at COP26. But we're talking about the fact we're coming to the 28th iteration and emissions are not dropping. We are not taking the right action at the moment to protect the planet in any way whatsoever. And the best thing we've ever got is the Paris Accord, which came out in 2015. And we're still talking about how we can implement that and make sure that everybody does what they promised under it.
And Donald Trump pulled out of it, if I recall.
Oh, yes, yeah, no, he did. Yeah, he pulled out of it. Although the Americans have gone back in. But yeah, so, I mean, what's the first sign of madness? Doing exactly the same thing and expecting a different result. This has to be changed. Yeah. The format has to change.
Does China attend this ridiculous jamboree?
Yes, China will be attending it. It's not their leader. It's one of their ministers is attending.
Right.
And in fact, when we say that China's attending it, I mean, you know, China are the preeminent mover on climate change at the moment. They are doing everything. And in fact, not just they're doing everything, they're the biggest danger to us and all of the free world in terms of what's happening on climate change. They are got a grip on the hold of everything. I mean, the FT just brought out an article on it only a month or so ago, talking about the grip they've got. And we're talking about 90% of rare earth metals being held onto. They're making 80% of all stages of solar panels, 60% of all the wind turbines. And there's been a recent spat even to show you what can happen. So the Americans recently tried to restrict the sale of certain semiconductors needed in AI technology to China. So what did China do? No. They just stopped supplying them with two of the rare earth elements they need to make the semiconductors that they control 100% of.
Amazing, isn't it?
That is the grip they're getting on this.
Why didn't Britain get to grips with this? Because there was talk that we were going to be leaders in green energy, green technology, as ever, trailing in the wake of China.
You can only put it down to, willy-nilly leadership and also down to, vested interests trying to push in, keeping the status quo as it is now, because the opportunity is there. And we've got the city to unleash. We've got all the financing opportunities there. We've been ahead on the tech quite often. I mean, just again, reading in an article in the last day or two, I mean, we've got a new company called Oxford PV that's producing a new form of solar voltaic panels that are coming out. You can know what's going to happen to it, though, don't you? It won't be able to get second or third stage financing, and it'll be snapped up to go to America, particularly as they've got in these new incentives under the Inflation Reduction Act, or it'll be snipped up and go to China. Yeah. So.
Do we have, though, is one of the reasons we haven't made such great strides with renewable energy just because we don't have the weather for it?
Oh, gosh, yes. I mean,
is it like we're not hot enough in the summer? We don't have the strongest winds to power the wind turbines.
I mean, look, we have the wind, and we know that our offshore industry is huge, world leading and fantastic. Onshore, of course, we've been held back by NIMBYism. We've been held back by the fact that we haven't presented it properly to communities. And there has been good talk now about unlocking that opportunity and then making communities benefit from it financially.
Giving them a discount on their electric or gas bill.
Absolutely. Yeah. But linked in with that is all the other forms of energy. I mean, tide and wave, we pulled the plug on our investments into it about 30 years ago or something. And we've only put back in, just in the last couple of years, 20 million a year going into tide. I mean, it's pathetic.
And we're an island.
Absolutely.
We're surrounded by water.
Absolutely. And I mean, it is working, but if we'd spent 30 years developing it with big investment, we would be needing batteries because this would be working all the times that the other
Or we could just be using our coal, Ed.
Come on. I mean, we don't want to use our coal, firstly, because that's backward looking. And then we've just recently, actually, was it today or yesterday? Well, we finally stopped using one of the open coal mines at the moment. Let's not go back to that. Look, we led the Industrial Revolution at the beginning. We can lead this new clean Industrial Revolution, but we've got to get serious.
But we won't.
Well, particularly I have to laugh when you just, you criticised Rishi Sunak in that previous report about having empty beds behind him. And I thought, what about all these empty words and empty promises? So here he is. He made a speech on the 20th of September saying he's unequivocal in our determination to stay on track for 1.5. And then he talks about rowing back from all the policies because it's going to help poor people not get poorer. I'm sorry. if we keep going as we are and keep paying the Chinese for anything, we're on a downward spiral for the entire country we will never recover from.
Are you hearing anything from Labour that reassures you that they would handle it differently?
No. Yes, handle it differently, but it was the word reassure. Look, they're not as bad, but neither Labour nor the Conservatives nor any of the major parties are on track to do what we need. They don't get it. You know, here's this enormous juggernaut of an opportunity coming down the track, and we can be at the front of it. Why on earth do we want to tinker around? I mean, Labour now they were talking about 28 billion a year from when they got invested into green technologies. And now it might come in the second part of their term, and we're not even sure of that.
Yeah, and this is, we're going to borrow this money. And of course, Keir Starmer's stung by Tory charges are going to get us into a lot of debt. But he has to take a stand on some issues, doesn't he?
Well, he does. But I mean, let's talk debt, which is, of course, one of the issues.
Yeah.
We've been outsourcing our industry for the last 40 years, which is why we have a trade deficit every single year for more than 20 years now. That's why we're in debt, why we don't have enough money, why our financing issues, we're worried about the interest rates on the national financing because they go up because we've got these debts. Let's grip it. Let's get Oxford PV and all these other tech companies going, and let's make the money here, and we'll sell it to everybody else, charging them our prices.
And is it also just about the fact that we don't have the right kind of financial landscape to support private business? Because I know you're talking about like government investment, but also we've got this ridiculous corporation tax, we've got high VAT. They did trying to find something to defend them, but Jeremy Hunt did say that you can now offset your big plant machinery against your costs now. That apparently is going to make a big difference.
We don't have a regime that is going to help all of these industries. Absolutely right. But I think it's more at a higher level. You've got to get the right mission, and then you start working out the right things to do. And literally, if we just took a 2030 decarbonisation target, our tech companies would be instantly worth 100 times more, and the city would start financing them even without government help. We've just got to take the right mission and opportunity.
So from COP28, what should we be looking out for, Ed? Who are you interested to hear from? Who are the speakers going to be in the next 12 days while they have very expensive lunches at expensive hotels?
Well, on the basis of just having hammered the current format of the COPs as being actually not the right way to do it, actually Britain does have a bit of a starring role. So not today, but tomorrow and the next day, we're having all the bigwigs from around the world are going to come in, and they're all going to pontificate. Actually, some of them may say some good stuff, and it starts with our king, who we have to admit has been a source of great inspiration for people around the world on this, and he has the opening speech. That's an honour.
Does he always have the opening speech?
Well, he wasn't allowed to go last year.
Sure, he wasn't allowed to go, but, and there's no reason why he should have the opening
speech all the time.
Why
wasn't he allowed to go?
His trust banned it, stopped him.
His trust banned him from going?
Yes, did.
Yeah. So there's no reason why he should have the opening speech, but he's been allowed it this time. And then you've got Rishi Sunak, who's got the closing speech of those two important days, which actually shows, if we've got the opening speech and the closing speech, that's pretty important. Macron is stuck further back in the running order and doesn't have this sort of prominence in it.
Of course, the King's speech will have been cleared by number 10.
Yes, it will have been. We assume that. Maybe he'll step off piste a little bit and say something really good.
I don't think he can now, he's king.
No, I think he probably won't.